Howdy, nerd. Howdy, nerds. Uh, Thank you for stopping by the PC building presentation I'm doing on behalf of the Marathorpe Public Library. It's nothing super fancy. I just wanted to keep it pretty, basics just to get you an idea of what you need to know before you get into building your own computer and how you're getting into being a hardware buff like myself. So we'll just hop right into it. Or as that one guy says, let's just jump into it. So as you can see here, we're just going to go over the basics of what you're going to need. You're going to need a CPU. Your choices are either Intel or AMD. You're going to need a CPU cooler. Some CPUs have their own. You don't need to buy one afterwards. Motherboards, they come in different sizes. There's your RAM, which we'll get into. Your data storage, whether it be an HDD or an SSD, that's a hard drive or solid state drive. Your graphics card, your GPU, either AMD or NVIDIA. Your power supply, and your case. And we're going to go into why choosing these things is as important as it is. So your CPU is kind of like the heart of the computer. It does the main pumping information from one part to the next. It keeps everything connected and is sort of the backbone of what you need. So your two choices, like I said, you have AMD and Intel. AMD is basically like the perfect mix right now. They have everything got you covered from low end to high end to why are you spending $6,000 on a CPU? They got everything. Like on your low end stuff, you got your Athlon and Ryzen 3 and 5 APUs. I believe that's all purpose or all-in-one process units or something like that anyway. And this is great for your office computers and then your budget gaming PCs. They're like up to $150 at most. So that's a really good way to get yourself started on a budget, or if you just want something to putz around with at home for, home use. And then you get into your Ryzen 3 CPUs, which are great for low-end gaming PCs. You can get the Ryzen 3 3100 for, I think it's like $130 right now, and it's pretty good. And then you move up next from that, you got the Ryzen 5 CPUs, which are great for mid-range gaming PCs. And they're good for if you're getting into, the beginning of streaming and editing. They got the 6 cores, 12 threads. So it's got you covered if you want to start doing some real work, some real big guy stuff. Up above that, you got the Ryzen 7s. And those are for your high-end stuff. That's when you get like the really good gaming performance and when you can get into serious streaming and editing sort of stuff, because you got 8 cores and 16 threads. That's actually what I got in here. 8 cores, 16 threads, great for streaming. And what's next? Is the Ryzen 9. Wow, can you believe it? They go up by 3, 5, 7, and 9, but where's 1? There is no 1. Never been a 1. Ryzen 9 is extreme. It's when you can do literally everything really, really good. It's like some of the best binned parts, the best parts that they picked out to put in a CPU. You can basically do like all of this stuff at once. Like I'm talking 12 cores, 24 threads, or 16 cores and 32 threads. That's a lot. 5 years ago, the biggest standard CPU you could get was 4 cores and 8 threads. And now we're up to 16 cores and 32. That's 4 times as big. Doesn't necessarily mean it's 4 times as good, because that's not how it works, but it's good to remember. And then the super high-end stuff that I mentioned, that's your Threadrippers. That's when you're getting into actual professional workstation stuff where you are doing incredibly hard compute work out in the field. If you work for, say, an oil field or something that does really, really hard statistics or high-end animation, that's when you get yourself a Threadripper. Very expensive. I'm talking you're starting $1,600, if not more. And then there's Intel. As you can see here, there is no reason to buy a new Intel CPU. I'm not doing this as someone who doesn't like Intel. I'm saying this as there is literally no reason to buy an Intel CPU. They have the same sort of tiers as AMD does, except there's called the Core series, the i3, i5, i7, and i9. But Ryzen has them beat with core count. Ryzen has them beat with thread count. Ryzen has them beat with your speeds and everything, and the amount of information they can put through them. And they can either do the exact same thing they can do for either less money, or they can just do it better at the same money, especially with the new CPUs they just released a few days ago. Again, I don't want to just be a guy that hates Intel. There is literally no reason to buy Intel, which sucks to say. It's not a good thing. You don't want one company to basically be ruling the roost, but that's where we're at. I'm not going to read out like the entire analogy here, but the whole thing is that basically a computer can work sort of like a body does in a way. Like your CPU cooler is like the sweat, you know, your sweat helps keep you cool. But there's two different kinds of cooling that you need, or that not that you need, but that you have access to. You got standard air cooling, and there is liquid cooling, which I actually have a liquid cooler in here, but for a very specific reason. But we'll go into that. So air cooling is very simple. A big old chunk of metal sits right on the CPU, right in here, pulls all the heat away that your CPU generates, spreads it out to some little fins and fans and stuff, and the fans just blow the hot air away. Simple as that. There are, like I said, plenty of CPUs that actually come with their own coolers. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not that great. But if a CPU has one to start with, then you don't need to go out and rush to get a new CPU cooler right off the bat. You can use that for the time being, and it'll get you by. But otherwise, like if you do just want a quick little upgrade, then there's some that are like $30, and they'll do just a fantastic job. Like this one here, I think is $35. And it does a fantastic job. It's good for up to like if I wasn't doing streaming, mine could use that. Mine did use that actually, that exact cooler. And then you can go to the really big boy stuff, like $100 or more when you get to your big Be Quiet and Noctua fan setups. Those things are beefy. They are large, and they can cool down like a Threadripper CPU. They can cool basically anything. So you don't need liquid cooling. There are air coolers that are usually a little less money than these, and they work just as well. They might just be a tiny bit louder, but that's about it. But actually, that's kind of where liquid cooling comes in, is that like you don't need it. You don't really have a huge benefit from it. It's just the main draw is that it's generally a little bit quieter. So instead of having one fan on a little small area of fins, that's what this thing is a fin stack. One fan blowing air over these fins to pull heat away. You have a radiator like this here. That's basically two of these blowing the air away. So they can just, the fans will kick in a little bit weaker. They don't have to blow as hard. They don't make as much noise. So it's mainly the main reason for those. Otherwise, they stay quieter longer. They take a little longer to get to full heat. So it's mostly just an aesthetic thing. Anyway, the motherboard is sort of like the nervous system. It's what sends like the signals to everything. It tells it all how to work with each other. So for example, it's got just a few things you need to worry about that it tries to interact with. You've got your CPU type. AMD and Intel need different motherboards for their CPUs, like this little part here, that's called the socket. This one only fits AMD, and then the other one only fits Intel. Simple as that. There's amount of RAM slots. Most motherboards have 4 RAM slots, like this one does here, but some only have 2, like this mini ITX case, and some smaller ones like this also sometimes only have 2. So not a huge deal, but that's something you're going to want to keep track of for when it comes time to upgrade. You won't be able to upgrade your RAM without buying a whole new kit, that sort of thing. And then just your form factor, which is your size. There's 3 sizes, which I actually have right here. There's your full ATX, which is this thing here. It's the most common anyway. It's got your CPU slot, 4 RAM slots, and usually has plenty of these like big, these are called PCIe slots that you put your graphics card and your other like accessories and stuff in. It has the most of those. And there's your MATX or micro ATX. It's right in the middle as far as size goes. Can sometimes have 4 slots of RAM, but usually only 2 or maybe 3 slots for accessories at the most. And then the smallest is going to be your mini ITX. That's when you get to the real small stuff. And that's this one right here. They only have room for a graphics card slot. As far as like the PCIe slots go, like the accessory slots, they only have room for a graphics card, and that's it. So they're pretty niche. That's why they're not as common. But also then your motherboard just kind of has everything else that you need. It's got your USBs on it, you know, like your in and outputs for headphone jacks, all that sort of stuff, your Ethernet ports, USB-C, depending on your stuff. And that's also where you plug in your SATA drives for your different storage devices, or like these things on here, these little gray slabs. That's where you put certain types of SSDs. So it just has all that stuff covered for you. So it all just kind of sits neatly into there. RAM, okay, like put it simply, RAM's hard to explain. RAM holds on to data and information that it thinks that the CPU is going to need very soon. It thinks it's important and it wants to hold on to it. So it just stores that data right nearby. So actually, if I just click back over here, no, 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 no. What happened? Who did this? There was me. There we go. So I'll actually use this as a quick example. So like, you see how close the RAM slots are here to the CPU socket? It's because it takes more time and energy to move information from your SATA slots over here, which is what your like storage devices will be plugged into, all the way up to the CPU, and then back to double check to see if it's right. Whereas if it stores that little bit of information in your RAM, it just has to go that far. So it takes less information, or sorry, it takes less energy and less time. So that's what your RAM does. It just takes things that it thinks your computer might need to use again and just keeps it right nearby. And then when it comes into speeds, it's just how much information it can send to the CPU at once. Most CPUs could use faster speeds, especially when it comes to gaming. Go with at least 3000 megahertz. It's technically mega transfers per second, but whatever. Let's say for gaming, start with 3000 megahertz just to be safe, because you'll start to see a performance dip if you go less. But when it comes to things like just an office computer or whatever, just the cheap stuff is fine. Anyway, your GPU is your PC's muscle. The graphics card, that's GPU, graphics processing unit, I think. I haven't seen the acronym used in a while. It's just what makes your games look real nice and pretty. And when it comes to buying a graphics card, you actually just need to consider sort of two things, 2.5 if we're going to get technical. Your budget, you want to know how much money you need to pay, and what sort of resolution and frame rate you want to play at, whether it's 1080p or 1440p or 4K. Your low-end cards, if you get one brand new, is about $200 to $300, give or take. If you start getting past that, then you really want to be careful for what you're buying. But if you're okay with going used, you can get, say, like an almost brand new like RX 580, which on average right now is $230 brand new. You can get it for $100. So that's if you have a budget that you want to stick to, go to the used market. That's where you can get some good deals. Then when you go up to your mid-range, that's about $350 to $600. That does seem like a big jump, and it is, but there's a kind of a reason for that. When you go into $350 range, that's when you're getting good for 1440p stuff, where you can start playing your games consistently. It all looks good. Your frame rates are fine. It's smooth. It's nice. It's good. Then you get up to $600 though, and that's when you're going into 1440p, but really good frame rates. That's when you're getting the high refresh rate stuff, like the 120 frames a second and higher, around there. So I call that all mid-range because 1440p is essentially mid-range. That's what you want to be kind of like shooting for when you spend around the $400, $500 mark. And then your high end is when you go to $650 plus. That's when you start getting really up there. And $650 as far as high end goes in Canada is actually kind of low on the high end, because the normal high end graphics card right now is $1,000. It shouldn't be, but it's $1,000, and that's stupid. So it's a lot of money, but that's kind of the amount of money you need to be paying to get real good 4K performance with new games that are coming out. $650 around that mark is when you can get good 4K performance at slightly lower resolution, but slightly like lower textures. You can lower some settings down, so it'll still look really good, but it'll run a little bit better. But go anything lower than about this much for a new graphics card, and then you're going to start to struggle. Also, here's what I was mentioning here. Important note, NVIDIA GPUs cannot be purchased at retail price right now. Please avoid, and I'm not joking, you cannot buy an RTX 3080 for any less than $1,000 when it's supposed to be $950. And you also just can't find them at all. On average, you're lucky to see one less than $1,100. You can't find an RTX 3070 at all. And they're selling for like $850 plus, which is nuts considering they should be $700. So you just don't buy an NVIDIA GPU right now. It's not good. Oh, hang on, what's this? Hard stop, avoid NVIDIA graphics cards right now. You just can't find them at the price that they should be going for. It's just not possible. That's these ones, by the way. This is the new RTX 3080, I think. Looks kind of whack, if I'm being honest. If I'm giving my true big boy opinion, looks kind of whack. I don't like it. But this, however, is the new Radeon, the AMD graphics card. It looks pretty slick. It's got 3 fans. It's more than 2. Yeah, I hear you laughing over there. Anyway, your storage. This is actually pretty simple. It's just the reason I have the acronyms stated out is just so that way you can kind of make sense of what they really mean anyway out there. So there's just kind of 2 types for how you're going to store your data. There's your HDDs, your hard drives. Most people call them. HDD is really awkward to say. They're pretty simple. They are slower than SSDs, but they are significantly cheaper and they can hold a whole lot more for that price. So that's really good for holding things like your games that are like I have a lot of indie games on my hard drive because they have short load times. They don't need to bring in a whole lot of stuff at once. That's where I keep all like pictures and stuff that I want to hold on to because I can just hold everything. It's really good for that. And they can only connect to your computer through the SATA ports on your motherboard. So that's totally fine. Like that's not really an issue. It's just how you connect them. So I figured I'd let you know. And then your SSDs, on the other hand, that's your solid state drive. They are much faster. I can't stress how much faster they are than a hard drive. Like I'm talking up to 10 times faster with one like this over this. But they cost like a whole lot more. This 2 terabyte hard drive right here is, I think, 80 Canadian dollars. Whereas this, if this was a 1 terabyte hard SSD, this would be $125. So almost twice as much for half as much. So they're not cheap. Sorry, that was my mistake. The 500 gig of these is $120, I think. Yeah. They're more expensive. We'll put it that way. They're significantly more expensive, but they're just so fast. And they can connect to your computer through 2 ways. They can connect through SATA ports. That's what this one does. So it connects the same way as these, has the extra power cord and everything, but it's pretty easy to get a hold of. And then there's these ones here, which connect through the M.2 slot. I don't know what M.2 means, but that's just what this little thingy over here is. And those go directly into your motherboard, and that's the real fast stuff. That's the real speeds. What your SSDs you want to use for is if you have some big games that have some really long load times, if you can afford an expensive SSD, that'll help get your load times way down, like quite a bit. So that helps a lot. And that's also a good place to put your operating system on your OS, Windows, Linux, whatever, especially if you have Windows, because then that just speeds up how quickly your computer starts up a lot. So it's very handy. Oh yeah, as I mentioned at the bottom here, it's also really good for putting your editing projects on these. So that way you can load the file faster, you can render the file faster, export it faster, that sort of thing. It just speeds up the process quite a bit. Your PSU, also known as your power supply. It's just like the song says, I got the power. I laughed when I thought of it. Your power supply supplies power. Good to know. And I know it seems really simple when you just put it that way, but there's a few things that you want to consider when you start getting into your power supply. It's important that you buy the right one. A good rule of thumb to follow is to get a power supply that is rated for double the wattage, double the watts of what your PC says it needs. So for example, if you need about 300 watts to run your computer, which is not particularly high, don't go any lower than a 550 watt. It's not a huge deal, but when it comes to efficiency and everything, you want to make sure that you have plenty of room to play with. So if there's any like spikes in power or anything like that, you're covered. Same thing with like when you get above that 400 watts, go with at least 750. It doesn't have to be exactly double, but it is good to have that sort of a safe room there. And that's also when your power supply runs at its most efficient. And as I mentioned, the efficiency ratings. Your power supplies have ratings for them. There is just standard 80 plus, and then there's bronze, gold, platinum, and titanium. These are basically just how efficient your power supply is. Most people don't need more than bronze though. So if you just get a good enough power supply with enough watts, that's about 80 plus bronze. you're totally set. It doesn't make much difference aside from how much power it draws off the wall. So it's very minor. It's not really a huge deal. But then another thing to keep in mind, this is mostly just for personal preference and for cleanliness of the inside of your case, is the cable setups, also known as modularity. You got standard, that's this one here, which has all the cables connected to it right away, so you can't take them out. There's semi-modular, which is this one here, where it has the power cable that goes to your motherboard and to your CPU. Those are connected, but the rest you can take out as you please. And there's fully modular, which you can take out all the cords and put in only the ones you need, which is actually really handy if you need to get a replacement cord. So that way you can get ones a little bit shorter than the regular power cord, etc. Skeleton. Okay, so it's like the skeleton of your PC. It's like an exoskeleton anyway. It's just what keeps it all inside, keeps it safe, and keeps it from moving around too much. And it houses all the other parts. But also, buying the right case in a lot of ways is really similar to your power supply. It is very important. It needs to fit your motherboard, for like whatever size you have, full ATX, micro ATX, or the mini ITX, as we covered. It has to fit the CPU cooler as well. Like some bigger CPU coolers won't fit in a small case like this one. So you need to be careful of that. And they can be a little bit too tall, or some radiators actually, like my 240 millimeter radiator won't fit in some small cases, even some of the micro ATX cases, just they don't have the room. So it's important to watch out for those sorts of things. Still got to fit your graphics card. Some graphics cards are real long. They're like over a foot long. That's big. They're not going to fit into all the cases. So you got to watch out for that as well. And you also got to fit all your storage drives and things like your extra SSDs and any extra hard drives you have. Like some cases like this one here and this here only have like a couple of extra slots for those sort of things. So if you have too many of those, but you don't have room in your case, then they're just going to be sitting off in the corner somewhere where they can get bumped around. If you have a hard drive getting bumped around, it's going to die. So it's important to keep those sort of things in mind, especially depending on what you might want in the future, any sort of upgrades you want to do. If you have a case that's too small and you're thinking you really want to get a new graphics card, or you really want to add some more storage, if your case is too small, you just kind of can't do that unless you get everything off of that first drive, put it on the new drive, and then take the other one out, and then you have an extra drive you can't do nothing with. That sucks. That's stupid. Don't do that. So what it comes down to is that you want to get the case after you've already figured out everything else that you want to get inside. You know how big everything is. You know how much space you need. You know how much storage you need. Get it all afterwards. Cases are just for aesthetics, but there are so many kinds that fit all your aesthetics, no matter how big it is. So it's a lot more important that you focus on the performance that you want and make sure your computer can do everything that you want it to do first before you start worrying about the outside. You know who's going to see your computer most of the time? You. It's not like you need to show it off to everybody else yet. So as long as it's working just fine, you can use like a standard, like the cheap Dell case that we have in the library computer. If that's what you got to put your parts in and it fits your parts well, good enough. That's fine. Get a new case later. That's it. Welcome to the end. Now you're probably asking yourself, wow, I know so many things, but what comes next, Mr. Lane, the computer? Well, I'll tell you, you know all the basics of what these things are, but you got to know what you're doing from here. This is the time where you start asking yourself questions. You can ask yourself what you want to learn more about, for example. You want to learn about what parts would be best for you? Go check out Hardware Unboxed and Greg Salazar on YouTube. They're fantastic. They do good reviews of CPUs and graphics card. The Hardware Unboxed guys do really good reviews of not cases, but like graphics cards, CPUs, a lot of benchmarks, so you can see exactly like how they compare to each other. One of the guys does actually really good reviews on monitors as well, if you want to see what kind of monitor fits you best for your budget. So that's a really good place to go for that. And they're also a really good way if you want to start to learn more about how the parts work. But if you want to really learn how the parts work, that's when you go to the Gamers Nexus guys. They are nuts. They're nuts. They do so many benchmarks. They cover so many things. They have like a $10,000 like fake CPU thing to test how good coolers are. It's ridiculous. They do so much. They fly to China every year to check out the like the production processes of like different companies that make like different cases and graphics cards and power supplies and everything. They do that every single year. It's awesome, but it's so much, but it's awesome. but they're like a really great place to go to if you want to learn more about that sort of stuff, if you already know a little bit. But then if you just need like a quick little burst of info, like what's good, what's new, what you should probably avoid, then you just go to Linus Tech Tips. You know, people make fun of the guy because he drops everything. Yeah, he's an idiot, but he's a good guy. And he is at least knowledgeable. So him and his crew, really good to go for just quick little bites of information. But lastly, you want to learn what the prices of parts are, what the size and everything, and how they compare with each other and how they can interact with each other. Then you go to pcpartpicker.com and you make an account, and then you start playing with the parts list creator. I've made easily over 100 parts lists in pcpartpicker.com, either for fun or for people, just to show you prices, to show you like what the wattage of things are, to see what's available near you. It pulls like the parts and like the sales online from like all the websites that sell to us. So for example, in Canada, it shows all the parts that are available in Memory Express, in Canada Computers out of Ontario, in Vugo out of Ontario, out of like Amazon, Newegg, PC Canada, all these sorts of things. It checks all the prices for them, compares you, shows you what the recent prices are, if there's sales on them. Awesome. All the time. I use it all the time. That's where I got like all these pictures from too. And it's also got reviews, user reviews and things on there. And people who use it are usually fairly good about leaving accurate reviews as well. So that's a really, really good place to head to if you just want to, play around and see what the prices and stuff are. After, of course, you check and see what the reviews for these are and how well they perform. Or otherwise, do you want to know how to get started and how to work out a budget for your computer? Talk to me. Talk to this guy. You're not going to find out all this sort of stuff from these guys over here because they can't talk to you one-on-one. They can't give you that sort of information one-on-one. I can. I love doing this stuff. I've done presentations like this for a school that my wife used to work at for fun, for free. I just love doing it. I helped a kid out in Hinton last year. I built him one last year. It was great for Christmas. It was cool. I liked it. I'm not building yours for free though. His mom bought the parts. So I'm not building yours. Unless you pay me to, unless you buy the parts, in which case I'll go and build it with you. And then you can get hands-on experience and show you how to do it yourself. Speaking of, later on down the line, either end of this month or in December, once the library is open, I will be doing a hands-on how to build a computer program inside the library. And I will bring extra parts. So if anyone is interested, you can actually come and see how the parts interact with each other. It is very helpful, and it shows you that building a computer is not as scary as it looks. It seems really daunting. It's not. I can rebuild my computer in 45 minutes. I know that seems like a lot, but I have like $3,000 worth of parts. But that's neither here nor there. I actually got all of it on sale, so I'm a smart buyer. But anyway, my rambling is done. So the last thing I want to leave you guys with is, if you want to find parts and where to buy them and like what the prices and stuff are, like how to set up builds for yourself, see if like some parts fit in some cases and some don't, head to pcpartpicker.com. I swear it's fantastic. It's great. Or also, if you like any questions at all, email me. I'll let me email on there, write it down, take a picture, do a flip, whatever. I don't care what the question's about. If you want to ask me, oh, what's this? I'm blind. I'm just thinking like for anything else down the line, if you have any questions of like when to get started, if you want to know where to get a good monitor or whatever, email me whenever you want. I might not get to it, right away when I'm at work, but I'll do my best. Holy crap, I can't see. Ugh. Also, I'm going to answer a question that I haven't been asked yet, but I know is going to be coming up anyway. My computer has a Ryzen 7 1800X, 8 core, 16 threads. I have a Zotac RTX 2070. I know I said not to buy from NVIDIA, brand new, and I didn't. I bought it from a guy brand new down in Calgary who sold it for me for $450, which was pretty good because at the time it was going for $750. So I saved $300. And even now, you can't get this graphics card or the new replacement for it for less than $600. So I'm cool. I have a Fractal Design Celsius S24. So that's just the Fractal Design liquid cooler, 240 millimeters long. Fan sizes, by the way, are usually 120 millimeters. So that's why it's called that size. So it's just to fit 2 fans. It's pretty good. I like it quite a bit. My RAM is HyperX Fury RGB, 3200 megahertz at CL16, I think it was. It's pretty good. I have an AverMedia, what's it called? HD capture. Remember? I just have a capture card in here for like HDMI and stuff. It's really handy. I like it quite a bit. It's got a nice blue light on it. A question. What are the cheapest and most expensive builds that you've made, either physically or on PC Parts Picker? The cheapest build that I've made is actually one that I'm going to be selling. All the parts that I brought for it altogether was like $280. Like for like brand new parts. I had some other things that I already had on hand that I put in there, just like an extra hard drive and whatnot that was barely used. I cleared out the whole thing. So it was just a little office computer. So I think it was $280, $290. I'll round up to 300. And then the most expensive one that I've ever put together on PC Part Picker was, what was it? It was a Threadripper build that I was doing for fun for a friend of mine in Ontario. And I think it was without monitors, either $14,000 or $15,000. Which, yes, that's a lot of money. Don't build one that expensive because that's kind of ridiculous. It's fun though. It's fun putting the parts together to see like what would fit. But that's with like 128 gigs of RAM, a Threadripper, like $300, 360 milliliter liquid cooler, $250 case, like an $800 motherboard, that sort of stuff. Like 20 terabytes of storage. It was fun. I had a good time. I actually really like putting those builds together every now and then. It's good to see just what the prices and stuff are. Oh, let's see. What's a must-have for a budget gaming PC? I think a must-have for a budget gaming PC is an SSD for your boot drive. It's okay if you have like your games and stuff stored on your like on like a regular hard drive or whatever. But even if you just had like a little 120 gig SSD, like I actually have, it's under my graphics card. That's where the slot is. But I have a 120 gig M2 slot SSD. It was like $30, maybe even less. No, you can actually get some less now. They're like 25 for a little SSD. And you put your copy of Windows on there and your computer starts up so fast. It doesn't matter if your games don't load as fast. When you have a slow Windows boot up, you want to die. It's awful and you hate it. But then when you finally realize like, oh, cool, I can start my computer up in a matter of 8 seconds. After nearly a minute, that feels pretty good. Ooh, also, for a budget gaming PC, I would say a must-have if you want to just get like a budget graphics card, find yourself a used RX 480 or 580 on eBay because you can still find them for like $100. And that's pretty good considering it's on par with the, what is it? The NVIDIA GTX 1650 Super is basically the exact same as far as speed goes as the 580. And AMD's 5500 XT they released earlier this year is also completely on par with the 580. And those are both like $200+. Why would you pay $200 for a graphics card that you can buy used for $100? It's just silly. Just don't do it. No, there's nothing wrong with going to the used market, especially right now. There are some really good deals. You can get actually, if you want to stay around $200 or $250, you can get a GTX 1070, which is on par with the 1660 Super that NVIDIA released. I can't remember if it was last year or very early this year, but you can get like still a used one for like $200, and the 1660 Super now starts at like $315. So you can save yourself $115 or at least like $80 and get a good graphics card that way as well. And they're efficient and they're quiet. They're really good. They have a lot of really good coolers to choose from. Oh, let's see. Can you please move your computer up to the webcam to show it better? Nah. What's a good mid-range motherboard or for budget gaming? Hang on. A good mid-range motherboard would be something along the lines of the MSI Tomahawk. You can actually get some, like if you don't want like a full-size build right away and you want to save some money, get yourself a B450 motherboard, because those are still fantastic and they fit with all the Ryzen CPUs, even up to now, like the new ones that were just released. So they lasted like 3 years. Well, 2 years, 2.5 years. Yeah, a good B450 motherboard. You can get some from MSI that are really good. The Gigabyte models are really good for that time as well. And they'll still slot in for, like, I have like a Gen 1 Ryzen. I have Zen 1. I'll just, for clarity here. For the Ryzen processors, there is Zen 1, which is mine, the 1000 series. There's the 1000 series, which is mine. There's Zen Plus, which is the 2000 series. It's like original Ryzen, but it's a little bit faster, a little more efficient. And that's what came out with the 400 series motherboards. Mine came with the 300 series. There is Zen 2, which is the Ryzen 3000 series. Yes, that's confusing. It gets more confusing, just you wait. And then now just released, there is Zen 3, which is the 5000 series of CPUs. All of those like CPUs, right, that I just mentioned, all 4 generations there will fit on a B450 or X470 motherboard. That's a lot. That's literally never happened before. So that's pretty cool. You can buy yourself like a $100 motherboard that has Wi-Fi built in, or $120 for Wi-Fi built in. And you can start with just like a 2000 series motherboard and then slot up to like a 5000 series motherboard, like the next day. So that's pretty handy. You know what? I'm gonna do it anyway. I built it myself. My cable management in the back isn't perfect, and also I really hate that I have that red SATA cable down there, but I don't have any extra black ones. The only extra black ones that I have are the old SATA, so they're SATA 2. So they're a little bit slower. And I don't want that. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this all turns out and how it looks. But also, as you can tell, considering the only thing I have that has anything RGB on it is the RAM. I'm not really a huge RGB guy. Also, I'm gonna be completely honest. Don't waste money on RGB stuff. It's a huge waste of money, and honestly, it makes your computer look really tacky. There, I said it. A lot of it just looks really ugh. There's no style to it. It's just, hey, we put the lights on it, and it's just kind of lame. So there you go. You guys have any other questions? Because I have another little tidbit of information that is going to go completely over your heads because you're not going to be buying them anyway. Don't buy the new Ryzen CPUs at full price because they're too expensive. Explain what RGB is. Oh, sure, I suppose I can. I'm sure I can explain what RGB is. Thank you, direct message from the lady in the other room. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. That's just like the colorful lighting and stuff. I don't even know why they call it RGB when there's really no point in doing that, but that's what everyone calls it. RGB stands for red, green, and blue. It's just all your colorful lighting. Some of it can be changed through your motherboard. Some of it can't. So some colors you'd actually just be kind of stuck with. Like if I wanted to change the colors of my RAM, I would have to download a program from, where is it? I think it'd have to be, no, it would have to be MSI because I have an MSI motherboard. I'd have to download that program to then open that up, find out what my RAM is, change the colors of the RAM through that, and then every single time I open up my turn on my computer, it will open up that program, slow everything down, and then find out exactly what color to put my RAM as. It's dumb. Like all of the, this isn't a joke. I'm not saying this as a joke or to be like hyperbolic. All of the like RGB software, like controller software that you can get from any brand, whether it's your motherboard brand or your graphics card brand or anything like that, all of that is bloatware. Bloatware is stuff that just takes up unnecessary room on your computer. It takes up unnecessary RAM space Like your RAM can only hold so much information and can only like work on so many things at once. It takes up extra like room in your RAM, takes up extra like processing power from your CPU, and slows down your startup every single time you turn your computer on. That's what every single one of those like programs is. There isn't a single company that has made their like RGB like controller software good yet. It's been almost 10 years of that stuff being on the market and they haven't made it good. So if you can, just avoid that stuff as much as possible. I know that's a really long-winded way of saying avoid the RGB stuff if you can. Just avoid it. It's unnecessary, it's silly, slows down your stuff, it's yucky, and it looks kind of lame. But any other questions before I go? Because I can't think of anything else. I could go into monitors and whatever, but when it comes to your first computer, you don't want to be spending too much on your monitor anyway, because you're not going to really have a good baseline of what you want your games to play at. Actually, I do have a bit of advice for your monitor. For your first monitor, you are better off going with a 1080p monitor that has at least 120 hertz. That's your refresh rate. So that just means every second it will make a new picture 120 times. So it can only show at most 120 frames per second. Going with that over like a 60 frames or 75 frames per second monitor is very helpful, because a lot of games run at like over 100 FPS. And when you have really choppy like picture on your screen, it doesn't look good. And honestly, like 1080p monitors are really cheap now. You can get a 120 hertz or 144 hertz monitor for like a little less than $200, and it'll still be good quality. So really no excuse there. Otherwise, you guys got anything else? I'm just going to go look. Skillet. I like the skillet. I'm going to leave that on. I'm not seeing any questions come up there. So if you guys don't have any, I'll give you a minute, and then I think we'll call it there. All right. Well, in that case, thanks for joining me. We're going to have, I had this whole thing recorded, so if you guys want to go back and see if there's anything that you missed, like at the beginning, or if there's anything you want to double check on, you can access it later. And of course, you can just like email me whenever you need a question on tech answered. I am a huge hardware buff now. I used to not be, but I got so into it. It's fun. It's awesome. It's cool. It's expensive. It's not fun. It's great. Get into it. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you. Oh, that just ended the screen share. Oh, that would have been so funny. Whatever.